everyone. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Brad.
Awesome. Thank you, Jace, for coming through there. I'm really excited to be with you this evening. And I've just, as we've been praying and doing stuff up front, I'd love to ask you to do something with me. This is a very spiritual thing. I'd love you to turn to the person on your left and give them a high five. And then I'd love you to turn to the person on your right and give them a high five as well, all right? We're going to do it in that order so no one feels awkward. All right. Fantastic. High-fiving is a spiritual thing to do. It's very encouraging and builds one another up, right? It also gets you a little bit alive, and that's a good thing. All right, guys, I'm really excited to take you into the second part of our series tonight, the Friends with Benefits series, right, which is a fun little name for our series. And tonight we're going to look at dating for the kingdom, right? Some of you may notice the flirt to convert tagline. I'd just like to let you know that's a little joke we like to have. Please, that is not what we are encouraging you to. In fact, it's pretty much the opposite, but please enjoy the joke with us, all right? As there's a lot that we can say about dating in the kingdom. There's a lot that we want to say about dating. There's not going to be space to say all of it tonight. But I want to say to you up front, in case you didn't realize, dating is not a concept that existed in the time that the Bible was written and the lives of the people that are in it. They didn't really date. They had arranged marriages. And so if we go and look for a particular passage to teach you about dating, we might come up a little bit short. Right, so what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to pull some principles out of the Bible. I'm going to share some personal stories with you. And just to say, I chatted this message through with Glenda, so she's aware of all the stories that I'm going to share. And she's okay with them. So thank you, love. That's very gracious of you. Right, and I'm going to try and share some wisdom with you that I've gleaned from my personal walk, from my walk as a pastor, walking with people. And I hope that together we can become better at dating for the kingdom. I don't profess to be any kind of authority on perfect dating or even to have gotten everything right all the time. But I want to say this to you. Everything that I share with you tonight, Glenda and I have tried in our relationship and the other relationships the one other relationship that I've had in the past, right? I've tried and we are trying really hard to do these things and to pursue these things. And I want to share them with you so we can do that together. All right? And we're gonna dip around. We're gonna do things a little differently. We're gonna try and hit a bunch of different topics on dating. We're just gonna kind of dip into them and try and look at some wisdom in them and ask the question, how can we use this as a vehicle to grow the kingdom through our dating relationship? All right. Great. Let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do quickly, and I think we need to do this, is we're going to set up what we mean when I talk about dating. Right? When I talk about dating, what's going on in your mind? What are you thinking about? And for those of you maybe sitting at the back and you're like, dating used to be quite a simple thing. It's got a little bit complicated over the years, right? We start with like a hanging out, and then there's some kind of pursuing phase. Then there's this thing called vibing. Maybe you haven't heard of what vibing is, right? Vibing is apparently a thing. And then at some point you move into dating. Right, so we're just going to have a look a little bit at some of those things, and I'm going to give you my personal run-through of what I think those phases should look like. Right? And you can disagree with me if you really want, and we can chat about it afterwards, but this is what I think. Right? If you're hanging out, right, this is what hanging out means. It means you're friends with someone, all right? And you see each other mostly in a group context. Right? Other people are around, and if you're a little bit like me, you're a bit of a schemer, and you kind of like this person, and so you're trying to engineer ways in your mind that you can get together a group of people so you can spend a little bit of time with the person that you're kind of interested in, right? Right, you kind of hang out, you quite like them, you're really hoping that they begin to feel the same way. And then you can move into the stage of pursuing someone, and this is really a stage for guys. Right, guys, I honestly believe this is your job. Don't fail, right? Your job is to pursue the ladies. All right, and ladies, we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be in this pursuit stage as a lady. But guys, this is where you try and muster up enough courage, and this is a really hard thing to do, right? To actually go to someone and say, look, would you like to do something? Would you like to go for a walk? Would you like to go play putt-putt, go to the movies, have coffee, whatever it is, right? You're gonna ask her out. And you kind of declared your colors, and now you're beginning to test the water and to see whether she likes you back in the way that you like her. Right? That's what you're kind of doing here. Girls, can I personally, like just a personal favor to ask, please, playing hard to get is not a thing. Right? Let's not do that. It doesn't honor anyone. Right? If you want your man to fight for you, choose the right man and he'll fight for you. Right? Don't put him through some silly test where you play with his emotions. He's just going to go somewhere else. Right? Because it's rude and it doesn't honor him. All right. Great. The best description I ever heard of what a girl's responsibility in this space is was given by Donovan Miller. Right? Some of you will remember Donnie Miller. Jace probably remembers the quote. It was a great time. We had a little interview going up on stage, and Don was asked this role. What is a woman's role in dating? And I think it fits into the stage. And he said, a woman's job is to dangle the carrot, right? And now you're like, what on earth are you talking about, Brad? I want you to picture a donkey cart, right? And you want the donkey cart to move, you can do one of two things. You can beat the donkey with a whip. I'll let you know, us guys don't like being beaten with a whip. It doesn't work very well. Right? We're quite resistant to that. Or you could take a little fishing rod, tie a little carrot onto the end of it, and hang it just in front of the donkey's face. Right? And the donkey's really excited for the carrot. He's going to try and walk to get the carrot, and he never gets the carrot, so he just keeps walking and following the carrots. Right? That was Don's description, and I think it's really great. I want to explain to you a little bit what that looks like by telling you a story of how I think Glenda did this really well in our relationship. All right? I'll tell you the story of our first date in as short a period of time as I can. I'd been thinking about Glenda. We've been hanging out a lot, been engineering a lot of group vibes to get to know her a little bit, and got to this one Friday afternoon, and I was like, I was just about to message the boys and be like, hey guys, you keen to hang out tonight so we can, hook a little vibe, and I was like, maybe I'm just going to take the plunge. So I'm just going to message her and see if she's keen to do something. So I sent her a message and I was like, hey Glenda, are you interested in doing anything tonight? Or are you free tonight? I think I said something like that. And she said, well, I'm taking my dogs for a walk on the beach. You're welcome to join me if you like. So I was like, okay, cool. So we went down to Scarborough Beach and we walked the dogs. And that was kind of early, you get the sunset and then you come back and it's still quite early. I'm like, man, I don't really want the night to end just yet. It's maybe 6:30. But there's dogs with us. I'm like, man, what are we going to do with these dogs? I don't want to go back to her place. The whole family's around. It's quite a lot of pressure. It's like, look, would you like to watch a movie? And so we watch a movie. And she's like, what about the dogs? The dogs can stay. So I was really hoping the dogs could go outside. But you know what? The dogs are outside. The dogs are inside. I had the husky hiding from me on my couch. It was really interesting. Right? But we watched this movie and we had a really nice time. And at the end of the evening, and I thought this was really great. We were just chatting. We've been chatting a little bit about movies and what you liked and what we didn't like. And because I haven't watched The Matrix in a really long time. And that was perfect. That was the carrot, right there. Right? She didn't need to say, Brad, would you like to watch The Matrix with me? She just left me enough. You're like, oh man, that would actually be great. I love The Matrix. Let's watch them. Right? And she's just done enough to allow me to take the step to go forward. Right? That's dangling the carrot. Ladies, that's your job. Right? Guys, don't be jerks, all right? When she dangles the carrot, she reciprocates some of the attention that you're giving her. Don't be inconsistent, all right? Don't be up one day and then down the next day because you're just not sure what's going on in your mind. Give it a chance. Go and pursue her because you want to find out if you like her and how much you like her, right? This is what I think the purpose of the pursuing stage of dating is like. You want to discover who they are. You want to discover how you might fit together if you like them and if they like you, right? That's what you're trying to do in this space. The pursuit stage ends once you've worked that out. Right? You don't get to pursue someone indefinitely. Once you've worked those things out, right, the pursuit stage ends. And this is how it ends. Either one of you realizes that you don't like the other one in the same way. Then please have the grace to tell them that. Right? I've watched a relationship go on for 1.5 years where some poor guy got strung along by a girl because she told him, look, I'm not really interested in you that way, but why don't you come over to my house and we'll watch this movie till 12 o'clock together every night. Right? It's really unhelpful. Don't string guys along. If you don't feel it, just have an honest conversation. It's not that hard. You can do it, and you can move on and continue to be friends afterwards. I've done it several times, I promise. Right? Do you like me? No, not really. Okay, let's be friends. I've got a lot of great female friends right now as a result. It's really awesome. All right. The other option is they say yes. They do like you. They like you in the same way. Then you move from pursuit to dating, right? You ask her to be your girlfriend. She says yes, and you move into the dating stage. That's how it's supposed to work. Except we have this thing called vibing, right? And you guys know what vibing is. People at the back are like, what are you speaking about? Right, this is a great quote from Urban Dictionary, right? Vibing is to be in a relationship / friendship with someone. It's basically two people who claim to be just friends, yet they flirt continuously with one another and are in a constant state of denial about the fact that they're actually in a relationship. And although this is not a relationship, so they claim, right, all the basic rules of a relationship still apply. Right. Guys, vibing is something that our culture has concocted to allow you to date someone without the commitment to a partner that actually dating requires. Right? It allows you to kind of take what you want from someone else because there's no rules. So you don't have to honor someone. You just kind of take what you feel is appropriate. There's nothing that governs the space of what vibing is supposed to look like. And so whatever we think is appropriate becomes what's appropriate in that space, and you actually don't honor one another. Right? This is all I'm going to say about vibing. Guys, it's really not a thing. Vibing is not a thing. It's a cheap, low-budget form of dating. Pursue your girl and ask her out or don't. But don't just vibe her. All right? And secondly, if you disagree with me vehemently and you're vibing right now, then listen to this. Whatever I'm going to say about dating applies to you and your vibing. Right? Because you're actually dating. Right? Vibing's not a thing. I'm glad we established that. All right. Finally, then you get to dating. Dating is when you've committed to someone. You're going to be their boyfriend. They're going to be your girlfriend. You really hate the words, but that's what they are, right? And it's a relationship where you find out more about one another, right? Where you honor and cherish one another. You learn to love one another. And ultimately, and I really do mean ultimately, you ask yourself the question, could I marry this person? All right? Please don't make the mistake of asking that question right up front when you've only known the person for 2 weeks. You're not equipped to answer it. You're going to put too much pressure on yourself, and you're going to blow the whole thing up. That's where you want to go. All right, that's enough about what dating is. Let's start to look at a couple of things in dating and how we can use dating as a vehicle for the kingdom. All right, and the first one is this. If I want my dating relationship to be significant in the kingdom, what should I be looking for in a partner? All right, and I'm sure all of you guys have got a list. I've met some people and they say, look, Brad, I don't have a list. Right? What they really mean is they don't think they have a list, but actually they do. Right? You all got some criteria in your minds which you're thinking that, how is it going to help me to decide whether this is the right person or not? Right? That's your list, whether you like it or not. And the real question should really be, what should be on our lists? Right? I want to share with you as a little insight into my life. This is a prayer I prayed for years as a primary part of my list. God, help me to find someone with whom the contribution that we make for the kingdom together is greater than the contributions we could have made individually added together. Does that make sense? I pray that whatever, if we were together, then what God enabled us to do for the kingdom would be more than what I could have done individually and she could have done individually if we added them together. Right? That was my prayer. And I want to say to you, the way that worked itself out was a little surprising. It didn't turn out to be the kind of person that I thought it was. Glenda was different to the kind of girl I thought I was looking for a long time. Right? But I began to realize that there's a uniqueness in our partnering that God has brought together that has enabled us to be that. And it's been a real blessing to me. Now, there's a lot of things that should be on your list. Like, pray that prayer, guys. If you're looking for a partner, pray that prayer and ask God to lead you to that person. I think that's a great thing to do. But we're going to look at two big things that just have to be on your list, right? There's a lot of stuff that should be and could be on your list. We don't have time. We can spend a whole message on that. We're going to look at just two tonight. And the first one is this. And guys, this is so critical. Does the person you're interested in passionately love God? That's the most important question you've got to answer. Do they have their hearts set on the things of God, or are they caught up in themselves and their own agenda? Right? I cannot tell you how important this is in the kingdom. If you want your relationship to be significant for the kingdom, this is so critical. And catch this, I'm not saying, are they a kind of spiritual person who might be open to spiritual things? Not even, are they a really sweet and kind person and they love me so much and they make me feel so good, but they've just taken a break from church and Jesus and God right now. Right? Not, well, they're kind of open to the idea of God and they're happy for me to go to church and live my Christian life, but it's not really where they're at. That's not what we're talking about. Do they have a deep and personal love for Jesus or not? Right? It's so critical, guys, and I've seen so much hurt and heartache where people get that wrong. Right? This is what Paul says, 2 Corinthians chapter 6, and you guys have heard this. Right? He says, don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers. And then what he does is he lists 5 reasons why you shouldn't be unequally yoked. He says, for what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? What accord does Christ have with Belial or the devil? Or what portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? What agreement does the temple of God have with idols? For we are the temple of the living God. As God has said, I will make my dwelling among them, and I will walk among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, go out from their midst, right, and be separate from them, says the Lord. And you guys have heard this passage before, but I want you to catch the reasons that Paul drops. Right? He says, he uses this picture. You've got oxen and they're pulling a wagon, right? And he says, don't be unequally yoked. Don't be unequally partnered with someone in doing something. Right? Because what he says is like, and this is about marriage. I just want to say that up front. Paul is speaking about marriage because there was no dating in that culture. But I have seen time and again that where you date a non-Christian person, you often end up marrying a non-Christian person, right? Because we marry those that we date. We don't get our parents to organize our marriage for us, right? So apply this into your dating. You have to do it, right? And here's what he's saying. Guys, don't you understand that believers and unbelievers are so fundamentally different, right? He takes 5 examples. He says light and darkness are nothing alike. Jesus and the devil are nothing alike, right? We are so fundamentally different. The fundamental orientation of our lives is divergent, that it doesn't make any sense for you to partner yourself with and pair yourself up with someone who isn't following Jesus. Right? So if your life doesn't have, your partner doesn't have their life orientated in the same way that you do towards Jesus, you know what's going to happen is that you're never going to have that increased contribution to the kingdom that you would have had if both of you were following God. It's never going to be a significant contribution to the kingdom. What's actually going to happen is that your contribution to the kingdom is probably going to fall a little bit, and theirs is going to stay exactly the same. Because you've got no support. So please, guys, please, find someone who loves Jesus. That's your first big rock that you want to hold in the jar. The second thing that I really wrestled with for quite a long time is how compatible do our callings need to be? And when I look for someone who's going to partner with me, who I want to be my girlfriend, how compatible do our callings need to be? And it's something I really struggled with. Should I be looking for me, for someone who's also called into ministry? That was a real battle. I know Ryan and I have chatted about this and how we come out of seminary, and that's very much the sense and the feeling that you get. If you're going to be a pastor, your like ultimate wife needs to run the women's ministry in church, right? That's kind of, no one tells you that must be the case, but that's kind of how you end up feeling by the time you come out of seminary. And you guys will have your own struggles of, like, what does that calling need to look like? And I came to learn that compatibility is the key word. I think that's the thing that's most important. Not do we have identical callings and like opposite callings. Those are both sides of the spectrum, and both of those are not what you necessarily have to look for. Right? If you want an identical calling, you're going to take your pool of people that you could potentially date, and you're going to take it and make it like this. Right? And you're going to make your life hard. And God may bring you someone with an identical calling. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's a wonderful thing, and it's a blessing. Right? But it's not something you necessarily have to look for unless God calls you to it. But if you have opposing callings, like if I wanted to go and work in business here in Cape Town, and the girl I started wanting to date wanted to be a missionary in Outer Mongolia, we're going to have a real issue if we try to get together. Right? There's going to be a lot of clashing and tension that's going on there. But if your callings are compatible, you're in a good space. If I can walk out my calling with you, and you can work out your calling with me, then together we're going to get along. We're going to be able to support one another in what God calls us to do. And maybe one day, maybe you get married, maybe God develops a calling that both of you walk in together. Maybe he doesn't, and you just support each other in the individual callings that God's put on your life. Right? But the key thing to know is, are your callings compatible? Right, those are the only 2 things we're going to talk about and what you look for in a partner. The next thing we're going to look at is one of the wonderful things about a dating relationship is that it's an incredible opportunity to better one another. Right? You get a chance to make each other better. And I'm sure you've heard this proverb before, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Right? Proverbs 27:17. I want to tell you, when you date someone, you get to do this under a magnifying glass. Right? The nature of your relationship is so close that all your decisions, a lot of the decisions that you make, impact the person that you're with in this relationship. Right? And the effect of this verse gets multiplied by the emotional intimacy of your relationship. The deeper that intimacy is, the more you are able to do this. I want to give you a couple of examples what this can look like. When you're in a relationship, it's really wonderful. You get to offer counsel to one another. You're in a space and you're encountering a bit of a problem, and you get to chat with someone. Someone's going through a really hard time, and you can share love and emotional support with them. They're encountering a problem, and you're able to offer wisdom to one another. You get to dialogue about issues together. So something's come up, and you're not sure how to deal with it, and you guys can talk, and someone brings a different perspective. Right? Then maybe there's something that's happening, and you get to have a fuller idea of something and how it works, because guys, we don't think like ladies think. Right? We have our own orientation. We think it's totally right and it's the only way. And then, like, this happens in pastors' meetings all the time. And then Shelly or Joe or Linda will share something. We're like, wow, we never even thought of that. We didn't even see that. Because they think and come from a different angle. And there's a blessing that comes from being together and partnering together where you get to see a fuller perspective and a fuller picture. And you get to understand things better. This is a big one. Your characters rub off on one another. Right? It really is true that you become like the people you spend most of your time with. Hey? You guys seen that? That's pretty much a real thing. I want to tell you it's a real thing. This can be a good or a bad thing, right? Depending on who you spend your time with. And some of the ways that you can make it better, right? You can use this to your advantage in your dating relationship is to identify some of your weaknesses and work on them together. I want to share a little example with you here to kind of unpack this a little bit. Glenda and I realized after we'd been dating for a while that deep emotional vulnerability was not a place that we went easily. Right? And that's not to say that we didn't like it. It's just that we would tend to not go there. We'd be talking, and we wouldn't plow into deep emotional vulnerability. It wasn't a space that came easily to us. And we recognize that's a bit of a weakness. If you're going to have a depth in your relationship, you need to be able to cultivate that kind of emotional intimacy with someone. And so we decided, having noticed that, we decided this was something we wanted to get better at and work on together. And so I went and found a survey not a survey, but an experiment that a scientist had actually done. And his hypothesis was that what if emotional intimacy and emotional vulnerability led to interpersonal intimacy? Right? So he designed 36 questions of increasing emotional vulnerability, and his hope was that that would lead to greater intimacy between people. And they took random people off the street, paired them up in this thing, and they asked each other these 36 questions over about an hour and a half, and he measured the results. And they were quite interesting. There was some really interesting stuff that happened as a result of that. Some people got married after meeting in this space. So it was, his theory seemed to work, right? That's not really the point of the story, though. Right? We decided we weren't really good at this. And so together we were going to take this thing, we were going to use this tool, and over three date nights, what we did is we took 12 questions each. There were 36 questions, and we used these questions to progressively open up our emotional vulnerability to one another. Right? And so you can use things that exist. If you can identify your weakness, together you can work to make it better. Right? Another wonderful thing is where you are strong and someone else is weak, you get to lend a hand to them as they struggle in some way. And where they're strong, they get to lend a hand to you. Right? One of the other wonderful things you can do to make each other better in your relationship is to not accept sin in your own life. And you give your partner permission to ask about it. Right? And this, guys, this is not nitpicking what you don't like about your partner in your dating relationship. Right? That's not what we're trying to do. Right? But we recognize we want to be holy before God. And we want to walk righteously before Him. And so we say to our partner, if you see something in me where I fall short of that mark, please ask me about it. And you give them permission to be able to do that. All right? We're not quite there yet, Charlene, but we're going to go there. All right. I just want to encourage you, if you do this. You can make each other better by being in a relationship. It's a wonderful opportunity to grow as a Christian because you allow that iron sharpening iron to really happen at a deep and personal level. Right. The fourth thing we're going to just touch into tonight, and this is also a big one, is treasuring holiness. Right. When you date for the kingdom, you've got to choose to treasure holiness. Right. Because, guys, holiness in dating is so hard. It's really, really hard. And if you don't treasure it, you're going to make mistakes. And the thing is, those mistakes you can't take back. Right? And they create a tension and a problem in your relationship. Right? And often those mistakes will haunt you. And they will give you regrets and fears and feelings of unworthiness and guilt and shame that you carry afterwards. And guys, we've seen this. As a pastoral team, Rolls has shared some of his testimony. Like, we've seen this hardship that happens where people have made mistakes. And then the enemy comes in and he starts to lie about it because you made a mistake. He's like, you're not worthy of being loved. You're actually broken. Who could really love you? You're not worth anything. You're not worthy of that person because you made this mistake. And he starts to build these lies and this guilt onto your back. And guys, it's a hard thing to cultivate. It really is hard because our emotions are incredibly strong. We live in this culture that tells us that we need to listen to our feelings, right? And if it feels good, it must be good, and we can go and we can do it. But we need to choose to treasure holiness, and we need to recognize that in doing that, it's going to be hard work. I want to say this. There is no mistake that you could ever make that God can't redeem. There's no mistake you can make that could ever tarnish your image in God's eyes or damage your identity. You will always be God's child. You're always deeply loved and incredibly valuable. And I know that there are some of you who are sitting here tonight and you've made those mistakes. Right? And I want you to know, as I share this, I don't share it in any way. And Jay shared about judgment earlier. Right? We don't share this out of judgment at all because there is none. Right? We don't judge anyone for mistakes that we've made. Right? We don't think any less of you. In fact, we love you and we long to see you walk in the fullness and the freedom that God has for you. And I want you to know that God can and deeply desires to bring real and deep freedom and healing from any pain, any hurt or baggage that you can be carrying because of something you might have done in the past. But I share with you tonight, in your dating relationships, I ask you, choose to treasure holiness because I know that it's the easier path. It's the better path. It's the way that's going to spare you pain and heartache, and you're going to be able to be more effective for the kingdom as you choose to treasure holiness. Right? Because the enemy isn't going to be able to get in and accuse you of things and make you feel worthless. And then you come into a space where God has created an opportunity for ministry and you want to step up, but you're like, oh, how can I? I've made these things and you know, if this person only knew this about me, there's no way I could make that step. Right? That's why we share this. Right? Because where we choose to treasure that, we deny the enemy that opportunity to get on our backs and prevent us from doing what God has called us to do. And one day, I promise you, one day the world will recognize the example that you've set by treasuring holiness in your relationships. Right? They might not recognize it right up front. And they might mock you and make fun of you. And some of you know the story about when I told all my River Guide friends that I was still a virgin. And they rolled on the floor laughing. Right? The world doesn't respect that. But then the world sees their broken marriages later on. And they recognize that maybe if they'd listened to the guys who were treasuring holiness up front, they might see more joy. Choose to treasure holiness in your relationship. And then you get to walk in the fullness of the blessing that God has for that. And what that means is you're going to have some like real deep, real vulnerable, real personal chats with the person that you decide to date. And you're going to have to be real honest and practical about boundaries that you need to put up. Right? And if you want some ideas about that, right, come and chat to me later. We'll talk about it. But you need to ask questions like, how long should you be staying up together? What movies should you be watching? What level of physical affection is appropriate? Do you have someone that's going to hold you accountable to these boundaries that you've set up? Right? Real important practice stuff, awkward stuff, but stuff you've got to talk about. And it's this kind of stuff that you can choose to honor and pursue together. Right? Fantastic. All right, let's go. Let's hit number 5. Right? In a dating relationship, it can be significant for the kingdom because you get to support and encourage one another. And this might seem like a really obvious thing, right? And it is quite an obvious thing. You get together, you want to support the person that you're dating. But I want you to consider this as you live and do ministry with people. Right? Consider what a blessing this is. And I'll share 2 examples with you. There was a lady at Glenda's work who was going through a rough and a really hard time. And God says to Glenda in a time of prayer, Glenda, I want you to go and pray with this lady. Right now, and Glenda's okay with me sharing this. I need you to understand that's a really scary thing for her to do. That's not something that she leaps to and jumps to doing. It's like spotlight. It's intense. It's like there's this pressure of, is God going to come through? What's he going to do? And I know many of you feel very much the same way. Right? And every often God will call all of us into different spaces that are uncomfortable and difficult and challenging for us. Right? But it's something that now we get to talk about. And she says, Brad, I feel like God has called this out of me. And so we get to chat and I get to encourage her and support her. Maybe I'm able to give her some advice. And we pray into it together. And the morning it's happening, she knows that I'm sitting in my office and I'm praying for her. And I'm trusting that God's going to give her the courage and the strength and the words and wisdom to share as she's praying. Right? Or let's flip it. Let's look at it like on my side. I've been given a really difficult preaching assignment and I'm not really, I'm really battling and I'm grappling with it. But I know Glenda's praying for me. We've been chatting about it and she's praying and she's asking God to give me clarity and insight. And then I come up on a Sunday night and I preach and I'm like, man, I just don't know if anyone listened. And I just felt like it fell flat and no one was with me. But she's like, Brad, it was great. Like, it was really good. And I leave and I'm like so encouraged. And our ministry gets better. We get to grow in boldness and courage, in perseverance and relying on God. Right? And it's an incredible blessing, guys. It's so wonderful to have someone in your corner when you're doing ministry. And to know that that person just backs you. They've got your back. They're always punting for you and praying for you. And if you're in a dating relationship at the moment, Have you considered some of the ways that you can be in each other's corners? Like, what are some of the ways where you can support one another and encourage one another in the ministry that God has called you to give? All right, let's do our last one. All right. When you date for the kingdom, you've got to embrace community. All right. And I find it ironic that I need to say this, because the fact that there's a kingdom seems to imply that there must be more than one person in the kingdom. Right? Otherwise, it's a pretty lame kingdom, and I don't really want to be there. Right? And so if you want to be for the kingdom, you kind of have to embrace community. You can't really get away from it. But I want to share into this tonight because I know that there's a real temptation to spend all of your time with that significant other once you found them. Right? And guys, I get it. Like, I understand, right? You've spent years waiting, looking for this person, and then you find them, and you're like, man, they are so great, and I just want to spend all the time I humanly could with that person because, you know, they're freaking amazing. And that's fantastic. I'm stoked for you. I am stoked that you have found the most wonderful person. Now, would you stop being so freaking selfish and share them with the rest of us? Right? We also want to benefit and enjoy their awesomeness. Don't keep it all to yourself. But seriously, remaining a part of the community once you've started dating is super, super important, right? And because God has given you a whole bunch of gifts, which He wants you to use as a part of the community. He doesn't just want you to bless your partner with your gift of tongues and interpretation, right? He wants you to come in this space and to share that with us, right? It's okay, you can have a laugh, it's fine. It's a real thing. God gives you gifts to use in community. Right? It's not a one-on-one personal gift that you just get to outwork. Right? Community is a space where God uses other people to speak into your life. Worst case scenario, and guys, I've seen this happen more times than I can count, and it makes me so sad every time. What happens when you date someone for 5 years, and you love them so much that you plug out of community, and your friends don't really see you because you're spending all your time with your partner, and 5 years down the line, the relationship ends. And all the friendships, all the support that you used to have around you is gone. And you turn back to your old friends and you want to try and plug back in, but they've all moved on. Because you didn't want to be a part of their lives. I've been so incredibly blessed by couples who've remained in community together. And it's something that Glenda and I try and do and make a part of our lives. We want to try and spend time with you guys here as a part of the 6 p.m. meeting and the young adults of Connect. I want to try and be a part of the Musenberg community. I want to try and be a part of my hockey team and a part of like our life group. And like we want to try and maintain our own space and our own community. And sometimes, guys, it's hard. There's a lot of places that you want to be. Right? But because God has called us to be in a relationship for the kingdom, that means we choose to value the lives of those we're in community with. And we want to be part of their lives. We want to invest into their lives, and we want to be blessed by their lives. That's what being a part of a community and dating for the kingdom means. You've got to embrace community. All right. That's it. That's all the stories and jokes I'm going to share with you, and hopefully some practical advice for dating for the kingdom that we're going to share tonight. Glenn and Kelly, why don't you guys come and join me on the stage? And what we're going to do now is I'm going to ask you guys in a moment to close your eyes, and I'm going to lead us in a time of prayer. Right? And there would have been different stuff in this message that might have connected with you depending on whatever space you're in. And so I'm going to just pray through various different areas. I'm going to ask you, if you want me to pray for you in a particular area, just stick your hand up. And guys, let's honor one another. Let's keep our eyes closed. Right, so that we're able to do this in anonymity and freedom. And we want to trust God to come and minister and work. And I recognize that for some of you, there's some deep stuff that might have come up tonight. Right? And a 5-minute prayer from the front is not going to do it. And you need to come and be with God and really trust God to minister into that space. And so what's going to happen is after I've taken this time to pray for us, we're going to move into a time of worship. And during the first song, we've got communion stationed in the front and at the back. And you're welcome to come and take some communion and be a part and make that a part of your worship. And then we're going to move into a time of worship. And after that time, as Roland said, we're going to value real prayer ministry. And you might want that for something we've spoken about tonight. You might want that for something else. But we have that space after our time of worship together. Just want you to be aware of that and just be aware where God might be speaking to you tonight. All right, let's pray together. Our Father, we love you.